Hello, my name is Nicole, and thank you so much for taking this time out to listen. Today, I wanted to talk about a pressing issue that has been going on for some time now, and it is unfortunately causing some distraction away from the things that matter, and that is this boycotting of the Oscars. Now, we have understood this particular entity, organization to be one that has been primarily Caucasian. We also know that there are those award shows that cater to the African American populace that are displayed on BET and other similar networks. Now, the problem with getting involved with this type of, shall we say, controversy, because it is that when you get too enamored, too wrapped up, too focused into these things, you don't see the bigger picture that God wants you to see. There is some barriers that have long been established between all races, all ethnicities, okay? And anytime you want to cross over a barrier where the majority of the people in the room, in the organization, in the system are a certain race, what will happen is you will receive opposition. Because if my club from the start was intended for white only, I'm going to have a problem with you coming in telling me what I should and shouldn't do. Now, plug in your ethnicity. Plug in some of your associations. Think about some of your relatives. When someone steps out of the establishment, out of the family, out of any type of group, and says, I want to do something different. I want to date interracially. I want to, be exposed to other cultures. I want to go places. I want to do things. And it's not the typical. It's not familiar. It's very much unique. There's going to be opposition. Now, why would we think anything different? I don't know. But some individuals have this mindset that if I go into a group, if I go or if I join a group, or if I go to a place and the people are a certain ethnicity or what have you, they should be accepting of me. If I go into a certain organization and all of them are heterosexual and I'm like the minority, then they should accept me. Okay. We don't live in that kind of world. And the more things change in some strange way, the more they stay the same. Because we have individuals who they will change or compromise to a certain extent, but they're not going to go all the way. So I might change my programming on the outside, but still have my personal issues, my personal preferences and so forth on the inside. And there's nothing wrong with that. But anytime you go into an atmosphere and you kick down the doors, there's going to be some backlash. There's going to be, unfortunately, some bloodshed. People have covert as well as overt ways of killing the mind, body, and spirit. As much as we don't want to pay attention to that sort of thing, that's what is ahead. We know that Hollywood has a long history of taking out their own. So while everybody is paying attention to these small squabbles, which are eventually going to grow into bigger ones, which are going to get some changes made. I mean, changes are going to be made, but at what cost though? At what cost? Because see, when you start messing around in one area, then you have to start messing around in other areas too. And then other ethnicities are going to rise up, and other sexualities and other other everything is going to say, well, what about me? And what about me? What about my needs? And what about us? Oh yeah. And how about this? And how about that? And now here we go again. You see, integration can go too far. It really can. If I establish a women's club, I establish it because we're going to deal with women's issues. I didn't establish that club for men to come into play. This is something that we want to feel comfortable about. We want to be able to let our hair down. We want to be able to get away from our families. So this is my women's club, and I'm sorry, men are not allowed in this club, okay? Or this is my black club. And I know, you know, that we've made great strides in, you know, the civil rights movement and everything else, but there are just still some issues dealing with black folks, and black folks feel comfortable talking amongst black folks, right? They also feel comfortable having their own networks. They also feel comfortable having their own, you know, cliques and fraternal groups and all of that good stuff, right? Secret societies even too. I know some people don't believe that, but yes, there are black folks who have secret societies, and you can look that up. But then we've got other ethnicities to consider, right? They have their clubs. You know, the homosexuals have their club. We don't want, you know, we like heterosexuals. We appreciate them, but you know, we got to have our own club, because we know some of you all are Christian, and some of you all are going to come in here and start preaching God and everything else. So sorry, love you. Okay. But no, you can't be in our club. Okay. You see, and we can understand that. I mean, you know, anybody in their right mind can understand that. Let them have their club. Let them have their little organization. Let them have their award show. But there's something bigger to this. It's not just about an award show. There's a whole lot of things taking place. But what is going to be the strongest selling point? What is something that's going to get people in a ruckus? Oh, that's right. That's prejudice and racism and those historic issues. And what better way right around February when it's Black History Month? And we already set them up for some time now. I mean, we got these African Americans all in a tizzy because we, you know, allow certain movies to come out within the past 5-10, you know, years, subservient types of movies. So they're already a little bit bitter, a little bit angry, you know. Selma, and then there, you know, was the movie about the woman who was the maid and how she wrote a book. And then there was another, you know, movie, right? 12 Years a Slave or something along those lines. And there was some controversy with that. Fruitvale Station, Lee Daniels, The Butler, Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom. Ooh, you know, those black folks, they're in a tizzy. Yeah. And you know what that means? That means that sooner or later, they're going to want to protest. We got enough movies out. We got enough programming. And every year, you know, we're just reminding them of their ancestry, their slave roots. Yep. Reconditioning programming. So now they're all hot and angry and upset. We can sell them on this particular issue so that we can get other things changed. You see, there's folks within the establishment that don't like the way the establishment is. So they rebel, or they don't like certain people. So they got to get a rally going. They got to get some support from somewhere, but they can't sell it on, I'm just mad at so-and-so. And, you know, I just have this agenda here, and it's really about families and old money and all that, you know, and just the fact that I don't like the way this club is. I want to change it. You know, somebody made me mad, but I can't sell that. But what I can sell is prejudice and racism and, you know, all these old white men never give black folks a chance. He got 'em, huh? Got mommy and daddy. You know, this could be, for all we know, you know, a bunch of young folks that are upset with their parents or grandparents. Okay. And yeah, things are not good. They're quite, you know, racist and prejudiced and, you know, everything else. But, you know, there's other issues to be dealt with, you see. And so while all of this is going on, though, folks are not spending that needed time with the Lord. They're not tapping into the spiritual realm. They're not getting their own houses in order. They're not looking around to see who's going to rebel in their household. They're not looking at what agendas are going on in their own family. Okay? Because, just like we can see government agendas and national and international leadership coming up with all sorts of plans to, demolish a city, a town, a village, a country. Guess what? You got folks around you in your own establishments, your churches, your family, and all of your, other little connections and so forth that are Judases. And they're rebelling, and they don't like the way this old system is, and they're trying to tear down some things, and they don't like prejudiced mom and racist dad and, greedy grandma and all of that. And they may not like you because you might be a minority. You're a Christian in a family or group or what have you of a bunch of atheists and agnostics or Catholics or Seventh-day Adventists or Church of God in Christ or Baptists. And hey, we got our agendas too. You see, this sort of thing that we're seeing right now is a good example of what happens between good and evil, right and wrong, okay? Rich and poor. Let's talk about that. This isn't one of those issues for the poor man, for the working man, for the middle class. This is an issue between rich folks, technically. We got to pick our fights, saints. And we have to look at what really is this all about? And what is it taking our attention away from? Because a lot of times when stuff happens in Hollywood, new movies, scandals with celebrities and all of that, it's usually designed to take us away from what our government is up to. Okay, what's happening in other countries, the unfairness and so forth. You're not going to look up videos to find out what's happening in the homeland. You're not going to be, focused on the unfairness and the civil rights issues and everything else that's going on in other countries, right? Because, hey, we got to be concerned with our own. But meanwhile, some of those rich people got investments internationally and nationally elsewhere. And so when you start, piecing together the puzzle, you find out that, okay, somebody's protecting their interest, or somebody is the cousin of so-and-so or the sister or the brother that's, on a board, and they want, to make some changes so that it'll open up doors for this particular populace or this particular, ethnicity or all of this other stuff, you see? So let us talk about some more issues dealing with this business with the African-American Oscar, boycott and so forth. If we look back, go back as far as 1939, Hattie McDaniel, she won Best Supporting Actress with Gone with the Wind, okay? But her role was a subservient role. She was a maid, okay? Her name was Mamie, and that's actually offensive, because the way she looked and, the things that she did, it was just one of those roles where black folks over time was like, that's not for me. Okay. But see, there were other roles like that. She set the way, all right. She set the way of more and more, unfortunately, not so flattering types of roles for African Americans. Okay. Subservient. Once again, subservient roles. 1963, Sidney Poitier, Lilies of the Field. 1982, Louis Gossett Jr. For The Officer and the Gentleman. 1989, Denzel Washington for Glory. 1990, Whoopi Goldberg for Ghost. Okay. We're starting to see a little bit of change here. You see, 1996, Cuba Gooding Jr. for Jerry Maguire. 2001, Denzel Washington for Training Day. 2001 Halle Berry for Monsters Ball. And those two wins there, that they got some African Americans up in arms, because Training Day, Denzel was a crooked cop. So people were talking about, you see, that's a bad image. I mean, if they're going to get an award, give out an award, why would they give out an award for something like that? Okay, well, be grateful, right? Denzel Washington, hey, he sold out a little bit on being a crooked cop, but he paved a way, right? Then the Halle Berry, Monsters Ball. People were up in arms about that. For one, she's, in the nude. She's with a white man. Some brothers, they're just not all that happy about that sort of thing, despite the fact that some brothers enjoy being with, white women. Just saying. Things started getting better again. Jamie Foxx, he ended up in 2004 getting the Best Actor award for Ray. And in 2004, Morgan Freeman for $1 Million Baby. 2006, Forest Whitaker for The Last King of Scotland. These are best supporting actor, Morgan Freeman. Forest Whitaker was best actor. 2006, Jennifer Hudson for Dreamgirls, best supporting actress. And then 2009, Monique for Precious, best supporting actress. And that particular role, that was not a good one either. I mean, she was abusing the poor child. African Americans want to be represented, but then if we start looking at other ethnicities, I'm sure the numbers are not as good. Okay. But this is something that has happened over time with African Americans integrating. But then there comes a point where you can either be compromising and willing to work with folks and all that, or you can be a bully and kick the doors down and demand being in places where really there is no fight. If I establish the club, like I said earlier, if I establish the club and I said, this is how it's going to be, I don't want you coming in, kicking my door down when the objective, the mission, and my intent had nothing to do with any integrating anybody. I just wanted an opportunity to be able to establish a club between women, or between, like I said, those that have different ethnicities, or different sexualities. We cannot push integration in things that just are just private. They're personal, or they're just meant to be whatever they're meant to be. When black folks saw this over the years with the Oscars and Academy Awards and all this and the unfairness, that's why there was the BET network, or still is, as well as the different award shows to represent African Americans. But this is why things sometimes end up blowing up in people's faces. You might get, yes, some changes that were long needed, but at the same time, though, those that started some things, they end up being martyrs. They end up, or their families end up going through much as a result. Oh, so you wanted to be in this club so bad. Okay, all right, we got something for you, And the next thing you know, they're suffering much as a result. I'm all for integration if it's a situation like it was back in the civil rights movement, where there was just blatant unfairness and there was no way around it. Okay. But when there's alternatives, and when there is the tools and the education and the support system and everything you need to establish your own, I don't understand what's the problem. Just have your own club, your own group. You see, if I go into a group and I say to these people that I want in, and they say, no, you can't come in, and I know that that group is not the only one in town, I can go somewhere else. You see, it's not necessary to fight every single itty bitty battle when some of those organizations and groups do not have that much impact. Now, I see why this particular group is being attacked, because guess what? They're all over the world. Okay. And so down with the big, with the rulers and with the big business. But at the same time, though, if we've got these empowered black folks that are doing any number of things, why is the focus on white so much when you should be focused on empowering yourselves? We're in a different time period now where there's more wealth and there is more opportunity. And rather than upset and anger folks, being nice and being kind and compromising and coming up with solutions and, getting people on board. And this is the sort of thing that happened over the years with BET, was they did reach out and talk with other people of different ethnicities and so forth, and got investments and shook hands and all that. But then you turn around and you bite the hand that feeds you, talking about unfair and bias and all that, and I've given you money to establish your own. There's problems. So we're going to see some changes, all right, and we're also going to see, unfortunately, the consequences of those changes with not a lot, but a few. And then the other thing that we're going to see in the future is, yes, there will be an uprising of other ethnicities and sexualities and genders and in other areas that we have never thought of before. And that what your mom and your dad and your grandparents and everybody else said, oh, no, that would never happen. Well, we're in it, and it is happening. It didn't stop with just the black president. So there will be those failures too in the process that we're going to have to pay attention to and not repeat the mistakes. Because see, just as there are the black movements and the KKK movements and the humanitarian civil rights types of movements and, on and on, there's also those Christian movements that God puts upon us. And they don't always come out overt or covert. Sometimes they're the kind of movements that you're in your room and you're praying and you're asking the Lord to make some changes on a local, on a national, and on an international level. And if you're not prepared, or you're not listening to the Lord, and you're not making the necessary steps according to his will, then your movement will fall flat on its face. There are plenty of examples of movements that started off real good, and then the next thing you know, we looked in history, what happened? Why is this movement no longer taking place? I mean, they were making such great strides. Sometimes God's just not in those movements. Sometimes it's a situation of financing. Some people are not doing what's right with the monies, or they didn't accumulate enough monies, or they didn't get enough support, or people didn't feel like it was that important. Okay. And then you have, some groups where they fall flat simply because they're disorganized. They have no real meaning, no real purpose. And some are just bad. They're just bad for society. So that is my take on this whole thing. And I hope that you all will stay prayerful and stay focused on the things of God. Don't be taken away by these things when you know there's a lot that needs to be done personally and professionally in your own life. These sorts of things will take you away from what you know to be right and true for a time. And then the next thing you know, the enemy is coming in through the window or coming through the back door. You suddenly get a phone call, or somebody suddenly showing up with some bad news or what have you. And that time that you should have been spent planning and doing what is right and what's necessary and true and, getting in touch with the Lord is wasted. Okay. So watch as well as pray, and also check around and find out what other news is going on locally, nationally, and internationally that is being suppressed as a result of all of this Oscar related stuff and other similar entertainment types of news. I thank you so much for listening, and as always, to God be the glory.